Metal recyclers have branded the government's increasing waste levy anti-recycling. They fear it'll make metal recycling unprofitable, meaning no cash back for scrapping your car or other metal. The proposed levy, which is due to begin next year, would see landfill fees increase from $10 a tonne to $60. It's hoped it'll reduce waste and incentivise recycling, but the metal recycling industry argues it will have the opposite effect. Rachel Thomas has the story.
Off a Masterton bypass, the smell of dust and hot steel rises out of mountains of smashed up BMWs and dead fridges. If you've scrapped a car or whiteware anywhere in a 300-kilometre radius, this is likely where it started its new life. Whited Upper Scrap Metals is home to the only metal shredder in the lower North Island, a $4 million machine of conveyor belts, funnels and magnets that sorts copper from steel from aluminium. Yard manager Kieran O'Brien watches it spin junk into clean metal, what's known as frag.
So this is a piece of frag, which at one stage did have a lot of this rubbish here, was either attached to it and it's been separated through the machine. And this is the other end product we have, which is called flock.
Flock, a mash of foam, plastic, carpets and steel dust, is bound for landfill. For the 60 tonnes of good metal the machine spits out each day, another 30 tonnes of flock is generated. Under the waste levy, getting rid of this flock could cost an extra $30,000 every month for Whited Upper Scrap.
If the waste levy goes up, that means we're possibly going to have to pay less for the scrap, which doesn't have that sort of incentive for the public to bring their material in here, which means it will just go to the landfill anyway. That's the way we look at it.
The current levy of $10 a tonne was set in 2009 and is among the lowest in the world. The increases are intended to kick in from July next year, first rising to $20 a tonne before rising incrementally to $60 a tonne by 2024. The director of Macaulay Metals, Jeff Harris, is setting up his own recycling machine in Lower Hutt, but worries future costs may be prohibitive.
What it comes back to is a point where we would ultimately have to end up charging to accept items for recycling, and people are very adverse to wanting to do that.
He reckons if people have to pay metal recyclers, they'll be more inclined to dump waste illegally or send whole cars to landfill where they can leach toxic metals.
By increasing the levy, the waste levy, it's in the terms of what we do in our industry, it's anti-recycling really.
Jeff Harris says flock is an essential part of the recycling process, so metal recyclers are lobbying for an exemption from the extra charges.
We believe that that can be administered and a special exemption granted for that to encourage further recycling. We'd like to discuss other initiatives and ideas. Perhaps at the time a car is sold, a levy can be charged.
The Associate Environment Minister, Eugenie Sage, says the government is well aware of the concerns and wants to ensure the industry stays afloat.
We don't want to create a disincentive for metal recycling. Metal recyclers have been around for decades. They were one of the earliest recycling industries in terms of scrap metal yards and the like. We need to make sure that they continue to function really well, and we need to address the shredder flock issue.
But she's concerned an exemption would see people claiming their rubbish is flock to wriggle out of the extra fees. She thinks there are other ways to help.
The whole waste sector is like a giant jigsaw. Lots of pieces that need to be put together. And other options, other than an exemption, would be some short-term funding from the Waste Minimisation Fund or a lower rate for material like shredder flock going to landfill.
The Ministry for the Environment declined an interview. In a statement, it says there are ongoing active discussions with the industry, and the Cabinet's paper mentioned the concerns specifically. It says there is some room for exemptions in the current legislation, but the exemption the industry is asking for may require changes to the Act. The government says the current economic conditions will be taken into account before the waste levy timelines are finalised. For Checkpoint, Rachel Thomas.